Welcome to Wildspire. You get to be a fly on the wall for my intimate conversations with entrepreneurs who are changing the world. I'm your host, Stephanie Benedetto, coach, storyteller, and unmarketer at The Awakened Business, helping coaches and change-making entrepreneurs unleash their inspired message and share it with playful unmarketing. I'll ask curious questions and explore uncharted waters with my guest today. Anything can happen when we step into the unknown of infinite creativity, and that's where we're going to play. My guest today is Phoebe Leona, and she is simply a joy to be with. Our conversations from the very first have been easy, meandering, and deeply inquisitive. Today we talk about the masks we wear in a positive way, and Phoebe shares vulnerably about her own transformational and creative journey. Founder of the Nomad Collective and creator of her own somatic practice, Phoebe is an author, dancer, yoga teacher, and guide who helps people feel more embodied through somatic movement and expanded awareness practices to become more empowered in who they are becoming, and have a greater sense of belonging. She has been a teacher and guide for over 20 years, but it was after a year of extreme loss in 2013 when she found herself in the vast open space in between her old life and a new life that she dove deeply into her practices and began her company Nomad to help others through their own transitions and spaces in between. You can learn more about Phoebe's story on her TEDx talk, her podcast, The Space in Between, her chapter in the multi-author book, Caged No More, and her solo book, Dear Radiant One, that is now available. It is my great pleasure to introduce you to Phoebe Leona. Hi, Phoebe, and welcome to Wildspire. I'm so excited to have you here.
Stephanie, I'm so happy to be here. I'm so happy to be here.
I feel like we've already entered into this conversation with a really fun energy. So I'm super psyched to see what emerges because I just honestly really don't know.
I don't know either. Like I said, we spoke, what was it, a week or two ago and various words came up and I wrote them down, but for some reason it was in one of the notebooks that I didn't have in front of me. So it was like, okay, I'm sure divine will guide me to whatever, or you will tell us. And then I thought this morning, I have a morning ritual every morning where I sit and I pull various oracle cards. I have like a collection of oracle cards, and I felt drawn to pull a card for us. And I just thought, oh, well, maybe that's where we'll be guided. So would you like me to share it?
I would love for you to, Phoebe, please.
Okay, so it's from the archetype deck, Kim Kranz. So if you have a visual, we have that. And I pulled the mask.
Will you describe this picture a little bit for us, Phoebe, for people who might be listening and can't see?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So it's split down the middle. Well, actually, the whole card is circular. If you don't know this deck, it's a very round card. And so right down the center of the circle, there's a line, and then on the left side is very vibrant colors, very vibrant red and orange and green and blue, and just kind of all very watercolory, very, very fluid, very vibrant. But then also within that half of the circle, there is this black and white mask, like almost like gosh, well, I'll let you describe it because I'm almost kind of like, is it tribal? Is it like a little doll? Do you see the face?
Yeah, it is. It does say something. And it's interesting because I think in this, what it says to us is as important as what it actually is, right?
Yeah.
So the feeling I get is it doesn't look like a masquerade mask. It does kind of look more tribal, I would say. Yeah, I get that too. It's kind of serious looking.
It is kind of serious, but also like, do you remember those faces, like those little dolls that we would have where the eyes would move? They're kind of creepy. Well, at least they're creepy to me. Kind of resembles that, like that porcelain face. Anyways, so on the other half of the card is black, mostly black, but there are lines. So like the center is black, kind of where the other half of that face would be of the mask. And then radiating out of it are these lines, and you can kind of see some gray and some white coming through, like this radiance. I don't know if you want to speak to what you see.
Yeah. It's interesting there because it looks like to me, half of the face that would be the other half of the mask is black,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
instead of radiating black, it's radiating out and getting lighter,
Mm-hmm.
which is very interesting.
Very interesting. So when I pulled this card before, and what I love about it, I mean, I can read if you want to, but I'll just draw in
Yeah,
what
tell
I
me what
pulled
it
from it.
means to you.
So, I pulled this and I immediately remembered what it was resembling, in terms of what she said. But then I was also kind of thinking, what is this for myself right now? Because as I'm speaking right now, you might notice my voice is a little hoarse. And I'm in this place of really calling my power back and claiming my voice in possibly a new way that I haven't done before. And this has been happening for the past year or two. And really, if I want to put a timestamp on it, probably 2 years ago when I claimed a new last name. And so this idea of what the message of the mask is, it's not masking and hiding behind it, but it's actually putting on this new persona,
Hmm.
this new identity to actually reveal more of yourself. Because sometimes when we put things on, like if you think of like putting that really bold bright red dress on, right? You have to embody that persona, like a very strong, confident person. Um, and so you kind of like fake it till you make it in a sense. And so that's what I felt when I pulled this card, the mask, like, okay, maybe you need to put something on right now so you can really step in and embody it, not to hide, but to really step in and like shout out and say, here I am, I call my power back. So that was very empowering to receive that this morning and to know that I was going to be here speaking and sharing my voice with you and all of your people. Um, yeah. How
Hmm.
about you? What came up when you heard I pulled the mask?
What comes up for me is really questions about the mask, the masks we wear. I've talked about this recently with one of my client
Mm.
playmates who has just started a podcast called Unmasked.
Ah, yes.
And we talked about the masks we wear and what's underneath. And she said something similar. She's like, it's not that, like she likes to ask women in particular, how do you really want to be showing up? Are you wearing makeup or not? What kind of makeup?
Mm-hmm.
Do you do your hair? Is it messy? Is it neat? Is it elegant? Is it,
Mm-hmm.
how do you actually really authentically want to show up? So it's not making a judgment that unmasked means we have no makeup on and,
Right.
we're plain clothed, but it's aligned like the outsides match the insides.
Mm.
So that's an interesting question to think of it in that way for you, which I'm going to come back to in a minute because I'm
Mm.
very curious about it. And I think about my identity, not necessarily as a mask, but something that's constantly changing,
Mm.
except that I think it needs to stay the same, or I think it's real. And so that kind of makes it seem more fixed, but it's really not. So for
Mm.
example, I could call myself an introvert and come up with lots of examples to support it. I could call myself an extrovert and come up with probably equally as many examples to prove it.
Mhm.
Neither one is true. And I kind of think this about the masks we wear. It's not about it being true, like it's a fixed part of our identity, but
Mhm.
it's what wants to be expressed through me right now that's authentic. What face am I meeting the world with that's real? So those are the kinds of things that are coming up for me around
Mm.
that card.
When you were speaking, I saw some images. So when you were speaking about this idea of the introvert and the extrovert, I was kind of seeing squares, like being put in a box. Okay, I'm an introvert here, and here I am an extrovert, or But then when you would continue to talk, I was seeing the circles, like how
Mm.
this card is, right? And like seeing how like the Venn diagram, right? Like seeing the introvert and the extrovert and how they're overlapping. And then all these other circles being our masks, as you were speaking into, of like how we can not just have one mask, but we can have many and they can also overlap. It's not like, okay, I'm an introvert over here tomorrow. And yesterday I was an extrovert, right? Like now, how do I do that today as I transition between the two? It's like, no, we can actually be both and honor both and not feel like we have to shut out those parts of us, right? That don't fit into that circle or the box.
Hmm. Yeah. It also reminds me of a story that I wrote a few years ago called The Me Suit. And it was
Tell me.
it was it was about a woman who slips on and off identities like a suit of clothes. And she
Mm.
tries on because she finds that she was very limited. So she goes and she just finds that, oh, I can put on the brave adventurer suit and I can put on the rock star suit and I can put on the pathetic loser suit and I can have all these different suits and I can put them on and off. And so she's playing with them and doing all kinds of things in her life because she recognizes that she could put on the identity that does and has and becomes those things. And
Mm.
then at some point she's like, well, what happens? What am I underneath all my suits?
Mm.
And she takes them off and she's this just ball of light that's like everything and nothing. And so that's kind of the
Mhm.
story. I'll link to it. I really like it. It says
Yes.
something for me and it's been an exploration. So yeah, thank you for bringing that. It's very rich for me contemplating it.
And when you just spoke of that, this was another word that dropped in for us was pure intention. And that's what I felt like when you said that ball of light of everything and nothing is that pure intention. And that was a word that you were saying, like was speaking to you recently. And I'd love to hear more about that and what.
Yeah. So I think for a little over a month, I've been contemplating pure intention, not constantly, obviously, but revisiting it, what it is. And the way that I'm seeing pure intention now, wow, in the context of what you just said, it looks a little different.
Mm.
That if that pure intention is what's under all the masks, is what's under the identity, all the stuff that changes, it's simply what is. And I think of it as what what is asking to be created through me in this moment with nothing on it.
Mhm.
No judgments, no comparisons, no shoulds, no fears. And it's not about me. It's just simply this pure intention. And we can think about it because so often when I have intentions, I'll tell you they're not pure. And I can tell they're not pure because they feel like, I want this thing. I really want this thing. And I'm not sure I can have it. And I don't know what's going to happen. And there's all kinds of stuff around it, right? There's extra
Mhm.
stuff piled on top of it. But I do believe that at the core, there is a pure intention. And this came out of a conversation with a woman called Linda Pransky, who was sharing about pure intention. And she said that whenever I have a pure intention, like a child just reaching for something they want without any conception of whether they should or shouldn't get it or have it, whether they're
Mhm.
allowed, they're just like, oh, it's a pure desire. She said, whenever I show up with a pure intention, the universe delivers. The universe meets it. But most of our intentions are really not pure. And that's not a bad thing. It just seems to kind of slow things down, like create friction in the works. And so I've really been sitting with that. And when it comes to sometimes very specific things, I feel like they're not as pure because I've got ideas about how it should show up.
Mhm.
But when it comes to the purest of intentions, or at least right now, how they're seeming to me, I think this could be different because it's how I'm showing up with it. They're very simple. Like,
Mm-hmm.
rather than having intentions for our conversation here that we deliver valuable content and, actionable takeaways, and like, okay, clearly that's not what I'm about, right? My intention is more like, let's enjoy each other. Let's have a conversational adventure that we both are really interested in having, and see where it takes us and be curious about it. Like, that's a pure intention. When I show up like that, I get it. I get it as soon as I ask for it, you know? And there's just something for me about asking myself, like, do I have a pure intention? And if I do, what is it? If I was bringing a pure intention to this thing I'm creating or doing, what would that be?
Yeah. Mm, I love that. Well, first of all, thank you for holding this kind of space, right? Thank you for holding that space, because I know for me personally, I love these kind of spaces where we can just dance around different ideas and words and be playful. Like I heard you, that word continuously came up as you were speaking, this playfulness. And I think that we don't have enough of that these days. And I do that a lot in my own work, is creating those safe spaces to feel you can be young and tap into what you're saying is that pure intention. Um, I feel I was like actually visualizing your, what did you call the me suits? The me suits. I love that, and I cannot wait to read it. But um, I was almost like feeling as you were speaking about it that yes, we have this ball of light, this pure intention, this, as you said, like the child reaching for the thing that brings them joy, the thing that they're curious about, the thing that they're in awe of. And it's almost like the me suit is the, okay, well, what role do I need to play to get that? And so sometimes we do need to put the superhero suit on, the mask on, to be like, okay, right? Like I could do it all. I have all this power. But then if we hold on to it too long, it becomes like we hit that wall. We fly into the wall, the brick wall, we fall down, like the brick wall falls on top of us. And it's like, yeah, that suit needing to be off now. What you needed to do is shift into another suit. Maybe it's the nurture suit, the mother suit, right? So I feel that we do have these different masks or me suits that are there for us to live out that pure intention. And it's listening and dancing with the universe and asking questions and letting the universe ask us questions too, and being really in this receptive, playful space of saying, okay, well, what's the next mask that I need to wear in order for my pure intention to be experienced in this world for myself and for the world? Um, I like that idea. I hadn't really fully thought about that until we entered this adventure space. What do we call it? Conversation adventures.
Something like
And
that. Yeah.
I love it. Yeah, we're in this conversational, and I call it the space in between. It's like there's no right or wrong. It's just we're playing around with ideas, and it feels really good to put that on. Like this is definitely something I'm going to walk away with, and hopefully somebody listening or many people listening will feel that too. Of that resonates with me, the me suit or the mask. Um, I'm going to walk around in a different mask today and see how that feels, and see if that feels alignment with my pure intention.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah. Trying to think of what suit am I wearing right now? What mask am I wearing? I'm not sure yet. And that's the exciting thing is like, oh, there's so many.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm going to put a couple on.
Yeah. I'm thinking about masks in a different way because usually I think about them as hiding
Mm-hmm.
what we hide. But the way we're talking about it is more the appropriate adornment
Mm-hmm.
for the intention of the moment.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like if I'm going to the opera, I'm going to dress a certain way for the opera.
Mm-hmm.
Not because I have to, but just because it aligns with the energy. It's like what's being invited in it. And if I'm going swimming, I'm going to dress a completely different way because
Mm-hmm.
there's a way, and there's a way that I show up for swimming that's very different than I would show up for opera. That's very different than how I would show up for a backyard barbecue, right? All of these things, it's not that it's less sincere or less us. It's, I think the trouble sometimes that we have with these suits or these masks is when we become attached to them,
Mm-hmm.
when we think that that's us in some way. Of course, I'm going to put on masks. I'm going to tell stories about who I am. I'm going to put on an identity because that's how we function. It's really useful. And it's also
Mm-hmm.
fun. Just like
Yeah.
dressing up in different clothes or putting on different masks is fun. But when I start to think that that's me and it begins to limit how I experience my world
Mm-hmm.
or create some kind of a box that I'm putting myself into, that's when it becomes not quite so fun. And we don't have to do that when we see that we can take these things on and off as desired, as appropriate, as aligned.
Yeah, I love what you just said about like you're energetically aligning, like going to the opera, because that's really different energy from I have to fit in. This is the societal,
Mm-hmm.
law here is that I have to wear the baubles and the bangles and the beads and the velvet dress and whatever. It's like, no, I can just be in that energy and embody that energy as opposed to these are the rules and the laws and how to fit in. I love that. And I love that we have the ability to step into different spaces. And I think that some people do get a little lost in that, right? They feel like they do have to quote unquote fit in and wear this mask for this role that they're playing. But then if they step into another space, yes, the energy of it, like you said, the energy alignment will change a bit, but you still have that essence of you as you step into that new space. I'm going to sit with that for a bit because I think that's really something that I'm receiving right now too, of we can play these different roles, we can have these different masks, but there's still, it's just changing the energy alignment as opposed to, oh, I'm doing this. This is the person that I am. These are the characteristics that I have as that person. And then I step in here. And there's a lot of freedom in that. It feels really more fluid to say, okay, I'm shifting my energetic alignment to this environment that I'm in. I had a situation with my family recently that I haven't spoke publicly about just because it's very tender for me. So I'm probably not going to share a lot of the details, but I I was always the only child in my whole family. So not just in my immediate family, but in my entire like family unit of my maternal side. Um, she had two sisters and they didn't have children until I was probably 17. My mom didn't have another child until I was 17 or 18. And so I was always like the only child. And so it was really beautiful at times because like I didn't have to compete for other people's attention. But at the same time, I was always competing because it was always the grown-ups time. And so I would put on dances. The way that I got my intention was to put on dances. Like, okay, after dinner, it's baby time. And so I knew that I would get like 20 minutes after dinner to like receive the attention. And so I put on my mask of performer. And it made me feel like I belong in that family. It made me feel connected. It made me feel like I had purpose and I had something to give them. Because otherwise, Hero was just like this little child, like couldn't contribute to Monopoly or Trivial Pursuit or whatever game it was that I wasn't old enough to play, or they talk about politics or whatever those kind of big grown up things that they were talking about that I just didn't know much about or even care about to a certain extent. And we had a birthday party for my grandmother. just a couple of weeks ago, and she turned 90 years old. And I was actually gifted her by organizing the whole thing. We went on a big family trip on the weekend. Now I have cousins, but they're all much younger than me. They're in their 20s. I'm in my 40s. I have, the generation above me, my mom, her sisters, my grandmother. And I got triggered. Like I felt I was that little girl again. And there were some other details that were involved, but like I started to put that mask on again of like, oh, I don't belong here. Oh, I don't know how to get attention. Oh, I don't know how to participate in this conversation. Like I just kept seeing myself getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And logically I knew, okay, you're a grown adult. You have a lot to provide, in this space. Everybody loves you here. You're accepted. But there was like just this part of me that still had that little inner child mask on that said, you don't belong here. And I kind of wish that we had this conversation prior to that, Stephanie, because I wonder if I had that idea, like I could catch myself in that story. And you and I were talking about the stories we tell ourselves before we signed on. I was thinking, gosh, if I had that download already, like, oh, you just need to change your alignment energetically to who you are now and where you are now. I think that might have pulled me out of that trigger a little bit quicker.
Mm.
Thanks for
Yeah.
letting me share that. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing it. I'm going to go back to where we started before we hit record,
Mm,
because I think it's a really good illustration, and it's certainly very, very current, just
mhm,
some minutes ago, right? So like you, I found myself, we might use the word triggered, and I saw myself going into a story about something. Um, I found out a piece of information that I wasn't aware of. And I went into a story about my friend is withholding this from me and they were trying to trick me and manipulate me. And I'm like, and I saw myself doing it.
mm,
First, I felt it. It feels awful, but it really didn't feel that awful because I saw myself
mm,
telling that story. And I know that any story we tell is not true. Now,
mm,
that doesn't mean that it's supposed to be true, or that it's like there are stories that empower us and there are stories that disempower us. There are thoughts that feel good and there are thoughts that feel not so good. And this particular one was not feeling so good, but it was okay. As I came on, I was sort of laughing about it. I'm like, oh, I'm whipping myself into a frenzy about this. And I wonder how long it's going to take before it passes.
mm,
And even just in the course of these few minutes of conversation, if I look at that same situation right now, I can see very clearly that there's a factual thing that happened and all the rest is made up.
mm,
And it's okay that I make a meaning out of it, but let me know that I'm making up that meaning. And it just gives me a lot of flexibility because there are so many other things that could mean. And I don't even have to trade it out for a different meaning.
mm,
I don't even need to trade a bad story for a good one. Just recognizing that it's a story means I don't have to tell it. And it sort of drops me out of that thought and right into the present moment where I'm here with you. And I'm not
mhm,
even in that situation at all
mhm,
unless I think about it, unless I bring it up with thought. So the same thing is happening to us all the time.
mhm,
And we think of these, I'll speak for myself. I often think of these thoughts or these stories as being about me because that's the content. The content is clearly about me, but it doesn't say anything about me that I have them. So that means I can have really horrible, horrifying stories, murderous rage stories, or angelically blissed out stories. And none of them really say anything about me, but I can choose which ones I put on and off by where I put my attention. And
mm.
there's so much freedom in that.
There is. I Can we talk about a specific mask that we're kind of already talking about
Yeah.
that I feel like we should, it's just like in the space. And I feel like let's dive in a little deeper is the mask of victimhood.
Ooh. I had that one. That
Yeah.
was it, right? That's
Yeah,
exactly. I was
me
going into
too.
business. You're screwing me over and you lied to me and rah, rah, rah. Yeah, I'm a
Yeah.
victim here. Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's a mask that I didn't realize that I was fully like sitting with for a while, like I I wasn't, I mean, I was seeing that things happened for me. Like I have changed that script. It's happening, it's not happening to me. It's happening for me. It's happening with me. But I was still, there was like still this little piece of me that wanted to wear that victim mask every once in a while. Like, yeah, it's a lot safer back here. It's a lot safer here when I don't have control. That's really what it is. It's like I don't want to really, at least that's how I'm receiving it, because I've been really sitting with this the past couple of weeks. It's like it's easier to not have control and let things just happen.
Mm.
Like even saying happening for me. Oh, well, it's still happening for me. And I'm still like, it's still not, it's still, how am I articulating this? I'm still being passive when it's happening for me. Like there's still that holding on to a little bit of that victimhood. Like, yeah, I'm not doing anything else. I'm just going to let the universe, do these kind of crappy things. And I'm going to trust that there's a story in the end that I will overcome it and I'll be the hero. But for now, I'm just going to lean back and be this sort of victim. That's kind of where I was sitting. And I'm like, ooh, really? Is that what you're doing, Phoebe? And yeah, so I don't know. It's all kind of happening right now as we speak as I'm unpacking it, but I want to shift that. I think it is more happening with me, so I'm the co-creator of it.
Mm.
Um, just those little words have so much power to me, for me, with me. Yeah,
Mm. What if we say it's happening through me?
through me. Yeah.
Well, because that's just again, like we're playing with words here and
Hmm.
testing them out. I'm not saying
Hmm.
one's better, but this is what helps me to show up cleaner with my experience is that this is happening through me. It isn't me. So that when I show up in a shitty place, I don't beat myself up over it so much. If I show up with, like I noticed the other day, feelings of jealousy, which I really have a lot of, that's not okay to feel, that's not okay to be that way, feelings about, I can go, oh, jealousy is moving through me. That's
Mm.
okay. It's like the weather. We got a little jealous storm going through here, you know? Maybe it's not as familiar to me. Maybe it's not one that I prefer. Maybe it's not an experience. But yeah, I have those move through me too. It's just
Mhm.
less personal. It's not personal anymore. And it doesn't mean anything about who I am. So things moving through me. And yet there is what I'm hearing and what you're saying is that I don't see surrender as passive,
Mm.
right? Like surrender isn't giving up.
Mhm.
What it really is to me is being with what is. And that includes the experience I'm having that I might not like,
Mhm.
the thing that's moving through me that I think is undesirable. And in doing so, opens up this space. Being with what is lets me look around and see and know what's mine to do. So I'm not a victim and I'm not passive and I'm not saying, well, God's running the universe and God's doing stuff to me. And so I'm just going to sit here like, no, actually, that all animates me and moves through me and
Mhm.
empowers me, enlivens me and moves me. That's what moves me. I'm not
Yeah.
separate from it. There's nothing separate making me do anything or feel anything. It's all being created right in me. And that also doesn't have to mean that I blame myself. So that's why like through me feels good. And
Yeah.
even when I have a beautiful experience through me, like, wow, that was a super cool coaching session. Like I was so clear. Like there was such clarity coming through. And I can go, oh yeah, that was good. That was an experience moving through me too. That's
Yeah.
one I might want to grab onto and
Yeah.
and say, that's me. Oh, that was me. Like actually, that was an experience moving through me.
Yeah. Yes. And when you just said that, I think that's also something that I want to hold on to for us is to capture that too, of like not capturing it, right? Letting it go through us.
Yeah.
And I love reclaiming words. And I think surrender is definitely a word we can reclaim because it does, vulnerable also, that's been a word that, primarily Brene Brown started to reclaim for us. And I think surrender is something that we can also reclaim. Like you said, it's not passive. We can be engaging in that surrender. Um, I think I told you, but in my book, I write letters to the emotions as my way of storytelling. And it's very similar, like how you were describing, oh, jealousy is moving through me right now. Like that's how I like personified the emotions so that I could see them maybe as a mask, right? Maybe as this energy that's just moving through, but to give it this identity so it didn't become me and like become like I didn't keep that mask on. Like it was just something that I needed. Like anger. There are so many emotions that we deny ourselves because they're labeled as bad, right? But we actually need anger sometimes. We need to be angry about what's not good in the world and get that fire going to make that change, right? Not in a destructive way. Now, there's always the shadow of any emotion, but like to use that for good, right? And then like to what you were just speaking to of the experiences that we want to like move through us, that we want to hold on to it. It's how do we do that in this like with this equal like this balanced way, right? Like we can't just not hold on to anger and then hold on to joy. Like
Mm-hmm.
we have to negotiate here. That seems to be like the the riddle of life.
Yeah. Well, it seems to me that feelings are here to be felt
Mm,
and they're not a call to action. In
yeah.
themselves, they don't mean anything. It's like, it's just like if I go outside, we had this thunderstorm yesterday in the middle of the day. I was actually on a call and you could hear it through the
Mm.
microphone. It was that loud. And someone was like, whoa, that was thunder. I was like, yeah, isn't it cool? I don't take that personally. It doesn't mean that, I should go hide under the bed because something horrible is happening. Because that's not what directs me. And that's really good news for me because that means that when I'm under the influence of, let's say, anger, which is something that I've habitually thought I'm not supposed to express, not supposed to feel it, definitely not supposed to express it. I don't have to let it get a hold of my mouth and my hands in ways that are hurtful to myself or others.
Mhm.
I might, sometimes I do, but when I see it happening, I'm less likely to. It in itself doesn't tell me what to do. What it does is it tells me what I'm feeling. It tells me the energy of what I'm feeling. And when I look for what to do, I go to a different place, dropping out of that thought and into more of a space of stillness where I know. So it's sort of like I could feel anger and I don't really get this. Okay. So I'm talking outside of what I see clearly right now,
Mhm.
because I do think that there's something about, there's something about anger. I've heard, Tony Robbins say that it means something is being violated.
Mm.
But what I really think is being violated is it's in the realm of thought. I have this thought that something's being violated, which it may or may not be true.
Mm.
So it's like really useful to feel and notice and then drop out of it into, I want to say my body, but it's really into within. And what do I know to do? What's mine to do here? What do I need to see outside of that? And once it moves through, it's a lot easier to do. I'm not saying in the middle, like, okay. And I'm dropping out of the anger. And I'm like, no, okay, feel it, let it move. And then, oh, I need to take an action. I need to say no. It's time to change something in my behavior or request a change, or, there's something in that. And that helps me to not get caught in the story, either trying to get rid of it, change it, or trying to hold on to it. And living from that space of guidance more, and less from the turbulence of my emotions, which are so not reliable, both the positive ones and the ones we'd call negative. Does that make sense? Because I was definitely rambly in there.
No, I gathered some wisdom in there.
What did you hear?
Well, I was just, I'm realizing when I have conversations with people, I'm getting like images, more and more, like tapping into that clairvoyance. And when you were speaking, I just kept seeing like the emotions being the masks, like just to kind of go back to what we were doing, speaking into before. Okay, I need to wear this angry mask right now because the story that I'm in is angry. But then when you were speaking, I felt like you said, okay, I'm feeling that and I have this mask on, but now I'm tapping back into my pure intention, right? This light within me and saying, is this true? Is asking this question and saying, okay, well, maybe I do need to wear that angry mask on, or no, it's okay. I don't need to wear that. I'm going to put this other mask on because I'm safe. I'm good. So that was what was coming through when you were speaking into it, of having this sense of center. Like I usually talk about like your intuition or your heart space, how it's just like a very calm, steady, maybe it's one word, maybe it's just a few words, but it's not that, like in yoga we say vrittis, the fluctuations of the mind, where it's like telling you so many different stories. And those are like all the different masks and all the different emotions. And they're just like so crazy up there. But then when we can drop down into what you were kind of referring, what I'm feeling like you were referring to as your pure intention, intuition, your heart space, like, oh no, this is the truth. This is the story. And we can start to peel away those other things that are just not true in that moment. Maybe they were stories of the past. Maybe they're stories that we're anticipating for the future that we don't know if that's true yet. And we don't even, like for the past too, that was just our perception of what, and actually I'm trying to think if it was here today. No, is another card that I pulled. I didn't bring it, but it was talking about like when we look back at a memory, we're looking at it through a different lens each time. And so each time we're looking, we're actually changing the perception of it completely. And the invitation was, why not look at it through healing, like a healing lens, instead of always being like the victim lens or the angry lens or the resentful, whatever it is. That's kind of what I'm sitting with, to come back into this idea of masks today, of like not even how the world is seeing me through this mask, but also the eyes that I'm looking out through that mask too. Yeah. When I'm strong and powerful, how do I see the world? When I'm in that like soft, nurturing space, how do I see the world? Yeah.
And I think that for me, recognizing that when we put on our thoughts, or our thoughts move through us like masks, our stories are like masks that we look through and create the world with. We see the world with them right through those eyes. That just knowing that, it doesn't dictate that I should take off a given mask or put on another one, but just knowing that gives me the space of, oh, that's not what's really happening. That's just what it looks like right now through this emotional mask that I'm wearing, through this emotional experience that I'm in. I mean, I know really well, and I haven't talked to anyone who hasn't had this experience, that if I'm in a sour mood, and I open up my email, and let's just say there's an email, somebody's like, they send me a complaint or something that might not even be a complaint. I'm going to see a complaint. And then I'm like, oh, so I know enough now to like, don't respond, let it sit. I will come back the next day, reread that same email and go, wait a minute. That didn't say, there's no complaint in there. I'm like, is this a different email? Like, what did I read yesterday? Right? Because it looks different. The whole world looks different based on, it's going to look based on whatever thought created experience we're in. And just knowing that gives me the wisdom to walk away when I'm seeing things through anger or despair. Like, just no, this is not a time to try to solve your problems. Like, don't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. I keep thinking maybe my eyesight's getting worse because I'm like, yesterday, that person said a horrible thing. And now like, oh, that one word just changed. That's probably my eyesight. But it is in a lot of ways. It's our sight. That lens we're looking through. Yeah, I've been there. I have been there, Stephanie.
Yes. I have not met somebody who I've shared that with. They're like, I know, it's like, it's insane. Like, yes, that's the magic of how we create our experience through this energy of thought that we're under. It creates the reality that we see to the point where we will miss beautiful things and focus on ugly things, or vice versa.
Yeah.
And I don't even know if they're actually there. It's so weird. I don't know where the inside begins and the outside ends. I have no idea. I mean, I'm kind of living like there's something actually out there, but I don't know.
No, we're all your simulation, Stephanie.
We out, but really, and I'm yours.
Yeah, it's like beautiful how we aligned in order to like have this experience.
I really don't know. But I don't think I need to,
Yeah. I feel, can I share something that kind of this part of this transformation that I was speaking to earlier, that when you just, I don't remember what you said that reminded me, but I just had my book come out in April and it shares a lot of my story. And I felt that I needed to have a specific voice. Like I had to put on a specific mask to share that story. And as soon as it came out, I felt like, and this could be anybody. It doesn't have to be somebody who wrote a book, but any kind of project that you put your heart and soul into, and then it ends, and it's like, I don't need to wear that mask anymore. And it's really freeing, but it's also a little disorienting because now I have other people reading it through that lens. And I'm kind of like, oh no, I'm good now. I don't want to talk about that anymore. I want to wear a different mask.
Oh.
You're smiling and laughing. Do you connect with that? Do you resonate?
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like it was an experience that you were in, and now you're just in a different experience. And you expressed it in a way that was true for that. And now you're just interested in a different one, not rehashing the old. Like even looking at those same stories, you're a new person now. You're showing up fresh. Like the stories will be different. I'm really fascinated about how an actor who's really accomplished can say the same lines. They've memorized the lines, but somehow they show up fresh every time. So it meets the moment. They may be delivering the exact same lines, but it's not stale. And if you, by contrast, an actor who's not quite so skilled at their craft yet, it's like it's cold or lifeless, even if it's delivered well, or it sounds like memorized and robotic. They're saying the same lines, but there's an aliveness that comes through them. And so I think we can show up like that with our stories. Like we don't have to show up with the same old story we've told a million times. You can look at it fresh every time you pull it out.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm kind of nodding to that because I'm kind of going back to like what I was sort of inviting us into that inquiry was because I'm a dancer and so very similar to the actor, right? Like playing in a role, whether it is, a character in a piece or just more of an abstract feeling or idea or emotion. but you had choreography, you had, you have poses and you have different steps and you're learning them and you're choreographing them and you have to repeat them to a certain extent every night in the way that it is because you have an ensemble that's relying on you to catch you or for them to catch you, for you to catch them. So there is that experience, but you have to keep it fresh. And I think it's creating that structure and form, but then also for what I feel is divine, like that divine energy that is that, like you said, like keeps it fresh. But these experiences of acting, of dancing, they're intangible. Like you have to physically be there in that moment. Now technology is changing things, right? So that we can preserve movies and we can preserve even dance. Like this is a whole new idea to see dance on Instagram. Like when I was dancing on stage, like we would get maybe a VHS of the performance and it would be like little blobs of people like, oh, I think that's me. Like it's changed so much just in 20 years, how dance is being documented and it's so accessible. But this is the first time having this book like that it's actually tangible, that this moment in time and space is captured and people, even after I die, could be reading it and having that experience. And it's been really interesting for me to play with that idea. And I know that it happens every day for other people, but like I was like, whoa, how do you keep that energy that is like captured in a thing, like a thing that you hold, but you continue on in this realm that you're in? I don't know if there's anything there, but I just felt like I needed to speak into it a little bit.
Yeah. It's possible for us to show up fresh with anything, anyone, any moment. Like it's the first time. Like it's the first time you've danced this dance, even though you know it in your body, especially when you know it in your body. If you show up with it like it's the first time, it's automatically fresh. And I don't know if it looks different on the outside, but it probably does a little bit because it's what's happening. It's what's emerging. It catches the wave of this present movement, and it's not trying to make it look like the perfection of yesterday's or the day before's.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that because like if you're talking about masks or something that you're putting on or stories that you're telling, you get to show up with them fresh too and see something new for yourself every time and express a different facet, even just in the energy that you bring to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. Can I share just a little something? Like I feel called, I haven't talked about this. I'm telling a lot of secrets today on your podcast.
I did the same thing when I was on yours, Phoebe.
I've told only just a few people about this, what's happening. Because I was having this experience, like kind of my little dilemma that I was speaking to, like, how do I keep this fresh and not just like a piece of paper or many pieces of paper where you hold and it's over. I wanted to bring this experience, like to this multi-dimensional experience. And so I've been playing with like bringing in dance through my book readings and bringing in other artists where they're painting while I'm dancing. And I have this movement practice that I've been playing with for the last 5 years. And so I have people dancing their stories as I weave in. And it's this really beautiful thing that just continues to, and it's coming back to what we were speaking of earlier, the pure intention, is that I feel like, I keep getting these moments of like in awe and just reaching for it. And then like another layer drops in and another layer drops in like, oh, what if we add in David, the artist? What if we add in Gisela, the poet? Like, what if we add in people who are in the audience and having them move? And there's that I feel like, yes, I'm asking now, okay, what is the mask that I need to wear right now? Is it like the business person? So like, how do we get funding for this? Okay, now it's like, okay, I'm artistic director. Let's drop into that. So I'm really excited to like be in that co-creative space with people again. And it feels really good to be in it. And I think the reason why I'm sharing is because I'm hoping that this conversation that we're having together today is inspiration for other people who are listening too, of like, what is that pure intention within me? What is bringing me joy? What mask do I need to have? And not know all of I think sometimes I get lost in the steps. Like, okay, here's the thing that I want. Here's that pure intention. And I get lost in like the how and the robotic steps that I have to take to get there. And then it gets stale. And kind of what we were speaking of the masks before, of like, okay, I shouldn't be wearing this mask anymore. To just for an invitation for anybody else out there who's listening, like, is there something in you that you don't know why, you don't know how, you don't know exactly maybe even why, but you just know that something inside of you, that pure intention is there. And just to know that maybe it's the question is like, what mask do I need to wear right now to get me to that next step?
We can really trust the power of pure intention.
Mm-hmm.
It's very, very powerful. And just trust that you can show up and follow what you're drawn to and do what occurs to you, and it will show you the way. Yeah. Thank you for bringing that, Phoebe. So
you're welcome.
This feels like a good note to end on, I think. So where can people find out more about you and this emerging performance of writing and reading and dance and art and poetry and...
Yes, I have a website, phoebeleona.com. People can find me there. That will be more of what we've talked about today, of, the writer, the dancer, the speaker. I also have my own company, Nomad Collective, which is the nomadcollective.org. That's another website where I bring more people like us having these conversations, but also, being a space for healers and facilitators and coaches of all kinds who have this pure intention of helping us change the world. So it's like a support space for people there. And then I'm on social media, Phoebe Leona. .love on Instagram and Facebook and all of that. So those are all the places, I think, and podcast, and just you'll find me.
Beautiful.
Thank
I will
you.
share all the links as well in the description below this video and on the blog page too. Thank you so much, Phoebe. It's been a pleasure.
Oh my gosh, Stephanie, I just want to honor you because we met about a year ago through, I guess, the podcast group in Facebook. And then we immediately figured out that we were in the same area at one point in our time, like physical location. And I just felt so connected with you. And I love how we just ebb and flow in the conversations that we have. Like we pick up right where we left off. And I honor that, our friendship in that way. And also just how you do that so effortlessly and gracefully with all of your guests. So thank you.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for joining me for today's Wildspire conversation. If you'd like to receive a weekly Wildspire email from me filled with inspiring stories, unmarketing experiments, tips for playing your way to impact and income without the hustle and hype, insights from my spiritual business journey, and more, go to theawakenedbusiness.com/Wildspire. Until next time, may you know yourself as the gorgeous wild creation you are.